So this part of the demo is going to be starting with a jack-o'-lantern, a pumpkin, and turning it into a jack-o'-lantern. So if you already have a version that you made, you're in great shape. We kind of did that yesterday. And the basic outcomes from the day one from this are to start with a sphere, add 3 levels of detail. Shift D is what you do there. And then add a stem of sorts near the top, flatten the bottom. And then we talked about bulging, adding lines of bulge here. I've added a stencil, which is something that I talked about a little bit yesterday. This stencil almost looks like a wood grain to me, and I can either sculpt through it. Let's see here. There's a stencil. This one looks a little bit too lizardy to me, so I'm going to switch over to this one. And if I sculpt through it, that's too much of an effect, so I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to lower the strength on my tool by clicking on the Sculpt tool. And I take a look in the upper right-hand corner over here where I've got my size and strength. And what I want to do is adjust this so that my strength is much less. So I'm just going to do a strength of about, it happens to be, I'm just going to overwrite this and do 5 just to see what the impact of doing 5 is. I do not have a pressure-sensitive pen with me right now. It's not bad. And if I skip a little space here and come over, I can give it a pumpkin-y effect.
So that like scratchy thing, is that a stencil right there?
It is a stencil.
Sure.
So I'm just filling in a little bit more. I didn't require this yesterday. And if you can actually hold a pumpkin in your hands or look closely at it, you'll benefit from looking at some of the details on it. I'm going to lower the strength even more to a really low value like 1.5. There we go. That kind of dimpling is probably a little bit more appropriate. What I did yesterday, because you guys have got access to the Adobe suite, you can do the same thing. You can actually access Adobe Capture. And I used my phone with a pumpkin in real life to pick up some information. So Capture runs on my phone. I just got an SE2. It's not like a super powerful phone. But what I did is I picked up, for example, a color palette using Adobe Capture. And the way I did that is I took this picture. I'm going to click on the word image over here. So from this picture, Adobe Capture was able to pick up on the main colors. So those are the main colors in the scene. And I can actually use the RGB or red, green, blue settings from this to work in an Adobe product or in here. So in addition to the color theme, I also built a material. And the material is something I can use in a 3D world based on the actual pumpkin that was in front of me at home. If I look at the picture I used for that, that's the picture. I took a close-up of the skin. And you also can get an idea how, yeah, there's segmentation, but it's not really super deep. There's a bumpiness on that skin. So I'm not looking for realism. I'm fine with a cartooniness, but there's some great tools that we've got. I also was able to build a brush from an image. So this image became a brush. I've also able to build a shape. That's a brush. That's what I meant to say. So I could bring in this brush and I could have a stroke like that I could use in Photoshop or Illustrator. And all of these are based from images of the pumpkin on the kitchen table at home. So it wasn't even a large one. So it is interesting to me as I spent a little bit more time looking at and taking pictures of this thing, I realized some of what I was doing yesterday with the bulge was a little over the top. That doesn't mean you can't use bulge, just be careful that you don't add too much detail on it. And bulging can be done through a stencil as well. So now if I bulge through here, I can end up with alternating lines that either bulge out a little bit because my strength is nice and low, or recess in because I'm using 2 different tools. I'm not looking for perfection here. Don't misinterpret what I'm doing here. I'm just showing you another artist attempt at getting this done. And there's probably a better way to do this. This is what happens when a programmer tries to teach art. So now there's a trick here where I can move this so the stencil lines up with the top. I'm going to use a tool over here that says move. It's under the pose tools. So I'm going to be a poser. Sorry. I'm going to click on, I'm sorry, no, it's not pose. It's select move tools. Move over here to select move. Let me get my head out of the way. And you'll see this thing that says translate right under my chin here. And if I click on translate, I get something I can move my model. So my model's a little bit lower. And my stencil now covers the upper part of that part. So I can go ahead and do my sculpting or my bulging. Yeah, there's got to be a better way to do this. I'm going to continue that bulge up. Rotate my jack-o'-lantern around and just kind of continue on these bulging areas, heading more or less towards the middle of it. And the thing that got a little tricky as I looked at it, and that's where the pen for the fine details is really towards the stem. There's all of these lines need to come in, like the sides of a clock. I'm going to hold S and move my stencil here so that it ends up at a different location and rotate it to try to go towards the center. And as I rotate my object around, I can kind of get my lines to go towards the center. This seemed to be a challenge for me when I was trying to do it in my mind. I'm like, how am I going to get this to go and line up with the bulges down below? So somebody who wants to be an artist, and if there's anybody online that wants to do it, you're probably hiding your laughing face from watching me do this because you probably know what you're doing. I would strongly suggest you look at art schools because, believe it or not, the people that work in the industry, games programming industry, the people that do that tend to actually, if you do art, you have a BFA or a Bachelor in Fine Arts. They're not programmers. It's one or the other. So doing a little bit of stenciling here now, what I want to make sure you remember to do is occasionally do a save. And there's kind of two kinds of people in the industry: those who make backups, and those who've never had a hard drive crash on them. So eventually it's going to happen to you. So make sure that you are taking time. Let's see, this is going to be Jack 2020 session 2 with some details. I haven't carved a face in it yet. Excuse me. I'm going to reset my window here, I think, because my layout seems to be acting weird. And see if I can rotate this around. My display seems like it's stuck. And so usually what I do is I do A for show all, and that usually lets me get in. Turn my stencil off. Maybe that's my problem. It still thinks I'm in stencil. Off. Hide that stencil. My stencil is off. There we go. I'm not going to use paint yet. I just want to rotate this around. We're going to paint after we sculpt. All right. Because I'm having trouble getting my jack-o'-lantern to rotate using the view cube, I'm going to show you something else in the upper right-hand corner. There's a few things that are kind of a scene explorer. And one of them over here in this area has to do with your viewport filters. Object list, one-click scene mode, top, there we go. If I go into perspective, I should be able to rotate this around. It should be an orthographic view I'm looking for. An orthographic view. would let me rotate around. I'm not sure why my orthographic view is changing on me. I need to deselect what I just did there. This is my sphere. It's my mud from mudbox. So visibility, locking it, the name. Looking for my cameras, my view. Viewport filters, properties. Oh, stop blocking the layout, perhaps? I'm gonna look at my hotkeys. Basically, it's gonna show me what keys do what. And I'm trying to see what's going on with my camera here. Camera 2D pan. Should be able to use my mouse to do it. Turn the wireframe off and on. Front view. Okay. So, can I rotate now? Still can't. So by using the secondary mouse button, I can get into different viewports. Still not able to rotate it. So secondary mouse button, drag to the left, and then I can go up for top view, for example, or drag to the left and then go down for front view. And the front view is where I'm going to actually do my carving of my face. I'm not sure how to unlock my viewport, but this is a workaround for me. I'm still sculpting. I haven't painted yet. And so we talked yesterday about using flatten, bulge, and I think we used foamy to add some extra material. So what I want to do is put a face in here, and when I'm carving, if you're going to do something where two sides are going to be mirror sides of each other, like two eyes or two ears, it's very distinct possibility that on the sculpting tool you're going to want to turn on a mirror. And when you turn on the mirror, you'll see as I click on here that it's going to show either side of that particular line is the middle. I'm going to start out by doing a bulge. Now, again, I'm going to go more cartoony, but what I want to do is I want to bulge in a couple of eyebrows where I'm later going to put my eyes. So I'm grabbing the bulge tool here from the available ones. I'm going to make sure that the size and strength, I'm going to pump my strength up a little bit, and I'm going to move my size down a little bit. And what I want to do is I'll see a primary view and a secondary view, and I'm going to start to build what I want to call an eyebrow here. And I'm going to make it look a little more evil by emphasizing that lower part. And now in this area here, I want it to not bulge out, but go in. So I'm going to hold down Control. And as I hold down Control, I'm now indenting the area where the eyes are. So now what I've done is I've added an eyebrow and an eye using a symmetrical feature here so that the eyes look almost the same side to side.
So you're just inverting the function, right?
Yep, by holding Control, it inverts the function. So now I'm going to push in an area to make a mouth. I'm still in symmetry. So again, I'm going to hold the Control key, and I want to make something that looks like a mouth of interest to me. Remember, you can always undo something. What I'm doing right here is I'm just laying down a symmetrical view that I can later work with. I'm at a slight angle where as I push on this mud, it's going down. I'm not exactly... more front than not. I'm going to change my viewport here to look from the top just to see that I got my eyebrows. Go back to the front. Go to the side just to check where I'm at. Perspective view, and I'm not able to tumble here, so let's go back to front. All right, so I kind of want that downward turn of the mouth, and I want... So now I've done a lot of symmetrical work. But what I want to do now is I want to do some asymmetrical work. I'm going to actually add a nose bridge in the middle here. So I'm going to turn off the mirror so that I'm only working on one version of what I'm going to use like a nose here. I'm still on bulge. I'm not going to hold down the Control button, and I'm just going to basically add a bit of a detail of what would be a nose. Now, This is certainly not the kind of pumpkin that I would expect you're going to find growing in a field. If I would run and hide. If you found one that looked this much like a face. But what we can do now is we can actually add paint to it from this point. There's a number of other things you could do. If I look on the back of this object, I could put a second face on it. Let me think now. If I come here, I can go to. I'm just using my secondary mouse button. See if I can show both sides. Yes.
Wait, so do you want us to bulge out the eyebrows?
You don't have to. I'm just showing you that you could do that. You can add a bulge if you want to. It's not painted still. It's just got some detail on it. You can also carve using a stencil as well if you wanted to. Fill might be useful for me to fix up his mouth here a little bit. Just kind of fill in a little bit. Move the strength up on that. And then I can smooth in there as well if I wanted to. Smooth out the area in his mouth there. I don't want to end up with a lot of unnecessary details in his mouth. I'm only working on one side at a time on purpose now, because it's very unusual for you to be able to end up with a totally symmetrical jack-o'-lantern face. It's one of the tricks of an organic sculpture is that you add some imperfections. If it's a mechanical object, then by all means you could do something where it's very symmetrical. But most organic things, that's why I made his nose look different side to side. So it's whatever face you want to put in there is what I want you to put together. And once you've got a face in it, that's where I want you to be for the day. I'm going to do a save as, and I'm just going to put in with face. And because I don't like how the system's running, I'm actually going to close Mudbox and reopen Mudbox. Like I'm not able to rotate. And you can do that when you're remote accessing the lab as well. There's my scene. I'm still having trouble figuring out how to unlock it. I'm going to have to figure out what I'm doing wrong where my viewport's locked. All right. I'm going to stop this demo here for a minute that I'm doing with the screen recording. That now. All right. So thanks to the best student in the world, what you do is you go to perspective, and then you can unlock the view. I'm not, giving anybody else a hard time. I'm just rewarding the student that, did an outstanding job of pulling my butt out of the fire. All right, I'm going to turn off the grid again because it just kind of bothers me. I'm going to do a different face on the back just to show a different method. I'm not going to add eyebrows. Either one is fine. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut into the surface here. And I'm going to make sure that my size is of a reasonable, by previewing. So I'm going to actually cut a mouth into the model here. This is different than using the bulge tool inverted. So I'm actually cutting into my jack-o'-lantern. Up here, I'm going to change my size so it's bigger. And I'm going to make a a la, what do you call that? Monsters, Inc. I'm going to give them one eye up here. Is it Mike and Sully? Is that what we're dealing with there when I talk about Monsters, Inc.?
Mike Wazowski.
Mike Wazowski. Cool. I did not use mirror. I used the knife tool. And I can continue to work on here. For example, if I wanted to bulge the eye out even more, I can do so. I'm going to make my size be smaller. If I want to do an eyeball, I can actually grab this stencil here. I'm going to move the stencil down a little bit, size-wise. Oops, I'm going to undo that. I want to use the stencil here. Got it selected. I'm going to move the stencil by using S plus the middle button to move it up. I'm going to size it by using S and move it down. So I'm going to actually try to move this so that I can bulge out the middle and just the middle so it looks like one eye coming out. And that's going to keep me more or less confined to that area there. Oh, that's looking really weird. I'm going to grab the smooth tool, and I'm going to try to smooth out in this area here. Actually, I don't like the last two changes. I'm going to undo those. I didn't like that at all. Undo is my friend. All right, so I can paint more of a face on here and end up with a single eye on one side, double eye on the other. Both of these are fine for your modeling systems. I am in smooth. I'm going to pump up my strength here. Oh, I got the stencil here. That's probably what's causing the problem. Smooth out his eyeball a little bit more. There we go. Much smoother eyeball. Cool. I've still got my grid lines on, which, they don't really help me that much, but they're there. I can turn them off by clicking on display and turning off my grid lines. Don't turn off meshes. People have done that before. Wireframes, what I want to turn off. If you turn off your meshes, you lose your actual mud that you're looking at. So there, I got two faces. I got a somewhat silly, happy, non-symmetrical face with a single eye, and on the other side, I've got two eyes. I don't like how these look. I'm going to get in here with smooth again if I can, and try to smooth these eyes out a little bit. So I'm using the stencil to kind of restrict my effect here and smooth out the eye sockets. I can do the same thing by getting in the mouth here. Don't be afraid to move your model and move your stencil. Again, the select move tools, using something called translate, I can move my model up to line up the stencil with the mouth a little bit. I can zoom in and out to get in closer. And I can get in here and I can actually try to smooth using the smooth tool. Back on sculpt, using smooth, and smooth out the areas. And turn off the stencil. Got to get in here and smooth this out. Smooth. Strength is maxed. Size is okay. There we go. Because that mouth looks pretty gnarly in there. See if I can smooth this out. Too many details. I'm just kind of going along the track of the mouth there, smoothing it out. Your results are going to vary, of course. I hope you're not trying to do exactly what I'm doing. Two reasons. One is this should be your work, not mine. And the other is that I'm not good at this. I just think it's a really fun thing for us to entertain ourselves with the week of Halloween and come up with something festive that can be imported into Unreal. And you guys can have some fun with it. I'm going to pause the video for a minute. Re-recording this demo here just to make sure that I don't lose too many details on what I'm doing. I'm working inside of the mouth with the smoothing tool. I'm cleaning up some of these anomalies, I guess we'd call them, some of these excess polygons. And when the smoothing tool is in here, if I kind of center the very point of it on whatever looks rough, it has a better effect of smoothing over the parts here. If you don't take the time and smooth over your model, it's not going to look as good. That kind of makes sense. But the point is, I'm giving you time every day this week to work in Mudbox and come up with a decent jack-o'-lantern that you're going to be happy with. And you might think, oh, I'm not an artist, but take a look at the highlight reels from students of the past and see how often the 3D jack-o'-lantern they made ends up in their highlight films. It's I think, a very interesting example of a 3D creation. So you're a content creator, bringing it into the game engine. So I'm just picking on the ridges and I'm clicking on them. I almost feel like I'm a dental hygienist here. You're not flossing enough, Jack. You have too many seeds inside. I don't know why the hygienist has a high-pitched voice, but apparently, in my mind, apparently that's what the oral hygienist does. I suppose it could be like, all right, Jack, you got to floss your teeth. If you don't floss your teeth, you're going to lose your teeth.
I prefer the high-pitched one.
Okay, thank you. By popular demand, we bring back the high-pitched voice.
Thank you.
What color
Like-
toothbrush would you like today, Jack?
If you
Maybe
pitch it a little bit more, you can sound like Mickey Mouse.
Sorry. Oh boy, boys and girls, welcome to Mickey's face making.
The kids.
This is probably the smoothest I've ever taken the time to model. I for some reason I've always rushed this project. Like I'm in this big hurry to move on to the Unreal Engine where I'm actually feel like I'm better at stuff. And now that I really realize that it makes sense for me to work on this stuff alongside you, and we can both end up with jack-o'-lanterns we can play with. No, why not? Why not? Once this is orange, it'll make a lot more sense. It's been a couple of times I've carved real jack-o'-lanterns here in school. I brought them in, made a real mess in the room as I carve on them. Usually I try to take the tech campus logo and put it on a pumpkin, and then put it out front for people can kind of see it and appreciate it. I don't have any plans to do that this year. Oh, that's such a smooth eye. It's just remarkable. These do turn out better. I've seen students who are good with digitizing sketch pads, and they can do a better job because they're practiced at it if they have one at home. There we go. Fix that nose up a little bit more. Oh yeah, that looks nice and gnarly. Nice and...
How much mudbox are we going to use throughout like the rest of the?
Well, it depends. How much do you like it?
Well, it's pretty good. I mean, but as again, you said you were gonna before you used to rush things on Unreal Engine, and I'm guessing it's the kind of like the same thing, right? Because it's also like a 3D modeling software.
Yeah. So what we're doing is we're doing content creation right now, and actually I'm starting with putting the details into something that was provided for you. I also like to give you some exposure to 3ds Max, where you can build a basic model that you're going to bring in and add your details to. And so if you wanted, for example, a sword, sure, you could find a sword pre-built that you could probably download, but I'd like you to understand the process of creation and refinement. And depending on which way you want your portfolio to go, if you want to show off your skills, then you'll use it more. We get to a point where people have done their own work, and then I let them do some the required work, I should say, and then I let students do some of their own work. I think if you're passionate about it, it makes sense to spend more time on it. But if you don't care, you don't have to be on the required. The jack-o'-lantern is a requirement. Did I answer your question?
Mine's
okay?
Very great. Yeah, it does. Mine's very grainy. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Or because like I tried smoothing the tool and it kind of messed up, so I kind of like deepened it. I don't know.
I'm okay. I'm not going to grade you on the quality of your art. This is an experience and it's an exercise. So as we're exercising, we're learning.
I didn't use Stencil. I used more like the bulge and like
That's okay.
the invert of it, and it kind of made like or just off of that. That makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Boy, that's loud. Sorry about that.
Or are we doing the coloring today or just carving?
So I wasn't going to require coloring today because I wanted people to have like this chill experience of carving on Halloween week. And if you guys were here and I could actually, if you were in the room and I didn't have an audio issue where I'm having trouble hearing people over the music, I'd be cranking like Stranger Things and Nightmare Before Christmas soundtracks and have the lights down low. And it tends to be, kind of a, all right, this is there's other things going on in other classes, but when you're here, I just wanted people to kind of disappear in their work a little bit. So I'm trying to do some of that through, even though we're in a remote world. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys. I'm just trying to explain. I'm trying to do what I can to keep this tech experience positive for you, because this should be a positive thing. I think I want to put a heavier deal of scratching above his eye, kind of like a scar. Yeah, right across his eyebrow. Turn the strength up a little bit. There we go. The one eye's got a little more scratching through the eyebrow here. Get back in here and flatten the base out with the smooth. Schmooth. Pretty smooth there. There we go. To me, the asymmetrical attributes of this guy are going to be a nice feature. That is something I should be getting rid of here. Sculpt. Strength. About 9. 13. Wish I had something that looked more like convergent lines for my stencil. Bum, 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 bum. I'll have to work on that. There's got to be a trick for it. All right, so I've got my face carved. I haven't done anything with the stem. The bottom, I suppose I should add some kind of a pattern on the bottom that looks like it sat in a field. That might work. A little unevenness. See if there's anything else that looks better. That looks weird. Yeah, I like that one better. Sculpt through this. Let's see what that does. Yeah, that's a nice uneven bottom. Still need to get some lines to come out though. Maybe I'll use bulge. And come out to the sides like so. Too much. Straight down. If I paint that up a little bit, I think that'll look better for a bottom. Yeah, I think I'm good enough with my sculpting now. So this would be an example where somebody's done doing their sculpting, and I only expect one face. Um, Probably some more details on the stem would be appropriate. So, but I want to stop the. It's the same process. Pick a stencil, pick a sculpting tool, make sure your strength's not too strong, and you should be able to work with your tool. So I've been using select and move to get to different angles. I've been bringing up stencils. I've been playing with the strength to actually do sculpting. Make sure I'm on my sculpt tool options and move my strength up, my size down. It's going to beep again. Nope. Okay. Here's my stem. Getting some stemity type features from my stem here. Stems tend to dry out. They also tend to get a little more tapered at the top. So I'm kind of slowing down near the top to get more of an effect of it towards the top where it's almost fluted. They're actually, I think, more like a vein than anything else. Although I am not a botanist, so don't quote me on that. Just trying to make that stem look like it comes out from kind of a little indent area and transitions into a little bit more of a stemish area. You're getting there. I can add some darker color in there and hopefully make that better. The very top of the stem should be kind of like bristly, like bristles. I don't know if I have black and white. If I really scale this down, that's for stencil. Really scale it down and then move it. Get it just over that. Kind of fill up my viewport with it. Maybe more of a painting job than anything else. I'm not sure how much I want to do with modeling the end of this thing. I don't have a lot of polygons to work with anyway, so. Yeah, that might be worth trying. Let's see here. No, maybe. Control Z on that. Let me try a lesser strength with it. It's got a multiplier of 1. Maybe if I lower the multiplier down a little bit, do 3/4 power. All right, so that'll be the end of the stem, and that's about as much as I'm going to want to do on the modeling of the stem. I'll turn this off. That's decent. Yeah, I don't want an overly spiky. That looks like a decent stem to me. I'm pretty happy with that stem. Pretty happy with the top of the pumpkin. Pretty happy with the face I can color in on both sides. The bottom does not have my logo on it. That's something I've done in the past. Maybe a little bit too indented in the bottom there. So if I remember correctly, it is, how do you average? One of these helps you average things. Takes off the high areas while leaving the low areas untouched. I think I'm going to try to scrape around the edges here. Scraping into the middle to kind of soften that edge there. and maybe smooth the bottom a little bit.
If we're done modeling our jack-o'-lanterns, can we save them and then go?
Absolutely. There's instructions on how to give me a screenshot. That would be cool. All right. Thanks for touching base on that. You guys are good to go.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a good day.